Hello and welcome to the Take It Offline podcast. My name is Mike Emgood, and today I'm joined by just me. Today it's just me. We have 2 episodes in the books already. Episode 1 was a fun one. The first episode we had Mark Milnarski and Mike Rudolph on. Talked about, really a bunch of different things. And had a lot of cool discussions about really anything. Those guys are some of the most opinionated people I know, so it was really nice to have them on and talk for a little bit. And then this past episode 2, we had Kenny Sukic on, Kenny's an awesome musician, and I was happy to have him on because he and I have pretty different music tastes, so it was really cool to have him on and talk about different things. And really, the one that I liked the best was talking about what albums impacted us the most, what albums we would take on the desert island if we could only choose 3 each. I mean, we ended up choosing 4, but, we're allowed to cheat. So this episode, I wanted to be just me, and the reason for that is because I set out to do this podcast with a mission that I wanted to break out of my comfort zone and do something different, do something that I'm not used to doing and not comfortable doing. And I've definitely gotten used to that as I've been doing these podcasts already. But I wanted to give myself a new challenge, so I don't have anyone else here with me. So I'm going to be talking to you guys, just straight to you, the listener. And I'm excited to do that. It's going to be a new challenge for me, for sure. But I'm definitely up to it. This one is going to be a tough one, just because I don't have anyone to talk to. But we're going to get through it. It's going to be fun, and I'm going to love it. It's going to be awesome. So I was talking to someone about the podcast the other day, and I was, trying to see if they had listened to it yet, and they were not really familiar with it. So I asked them, do you listen to podcasts? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, what do you like in a podcast? And they said, one of the things that they thought really attracted them to a podcast was that they felt they were connected to the host or the people that were on the show. And they asked me if I felt that way about the Take It Offline podcast. And I kind of sat and thought about it for a second, and I was like, for the people that know me, I guess you would have a good understanding of, who I am. But for those who don't know me, or for those who don't know me that well, maybe you don't know who I am. So this episode is going to be, letting the listeners, so you guys, getting to know me a little bit. And one thing that is very uncomfortable for me to do is to talk about myself. Not that I don't enjoy it. Sometimes I just do a really bad job of explaining what I mean by things or explaining things about me. So this is going to be a test to see if I can actually do it, and we're going to give it a shot. So what I kind of picked here was events in my life that I think shaped me into who I am today. So how did I get to this spot? What happened along the way to get me to this spot? And I think that, really you have to start at the beginning. And you're going to notice that as I kind of go through here, there's going to be areas that I kind of breeze over a little bit. Mainly because when you're younger, you have a good time. You're a kid. You're doing kid things. But I'm not sure, at least for me personally, if there was anything that I could say truly shaped me the way that some events later in life did for me. So you'll kind of get that vibe as I'm going through here. So just to kind of get started, my name is Mike Emgood. By now you probably all know that. And I grew up in a relatively small town. I'm from Bedford, Pennsylvania, and it's located in central Pennsylvania. And, the reason I say it's a small town was there was definitely things that you could do in Bedford, but not to the extent if you would go to, Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or something where you have all of these different things that you could do. Bedford wasn't really like that. I mean, you could go have fun, like go to the movies or something, or if you did want to do something a little bit more adventurous, it wasn't really more than like a half-hour's drive away, so that wasn't really an issue. But I grew up in the same house my entire life, and something I noticed was when I tell people that, the first reaction was, really? You lived in the same house your entire life? And for me, that was just a normal thing. Like, I never moved until I moved to Pittsburgh to get my job. So when I tell people that I lived in the same house my entire life, and they tell me that they may have moved 2 or 3 times, I was the one who was also surprised because I was just used to living in the same house my entire life. But I lived with my mom and dad, and then I had a sister who was 10 years older than me. And that's also something that kind of gets an eyebrow raise, you know. My sister, so I'm 26, and my sister's 10 years older, so she's 36 now. And so whenever I was growing up, she was, you know, getting into her high school years and then going into college. So there was a little bit of a disconnect between her and I as far as being able to understand each other. And in the beginning, I would definitely say that it was a little bit strenuous. I mean, like, we have had your typical sibling fights when we were younger, but now, you know, we're both older and we get along just fine, you know, as tends to happen whenever you grow up. But I was a normal kid for the most part, you know, hang out with my family all the time. You know, we had a pretty big extended family, and we were all very close as well. You know, I enjoyed watching cartoons. One of the coolest things that I like to watch on TV on Saturday mornings was Power Rangers. I watched so much Power Rangers when I was a kid, like so many episodes that spanned it over the years, and that was like my favorite thing when I was a kid. There's this video that my mom has. Whenever I was a kid, I got like these gloves. They were the White Rangers gloves, and it's this video of me like beating up my pap whenever it was my birthday party, and that always sticks out to me whenever I think about how much I really loved Power Rangers when I was a kid. You know, any kids love that type of stuff. You know, now SpongeBob, I think, is probably still big, and all those cartoons the kids are still into. That was me. I mean, I was into all that as well. A normal kid. I also enjoyed playing outdoors. You know, I had a sandbox when I was a kid. I had a swing set. You know, I'd like to swim. I took swimming lessons at the local lake by my house. You know, I was thinking back and trying to think how I was, you know, vastly different than any other kid. I can't really think. You know, I was just your normal kid, enjoyed doing normal kid things. And the first real moment in my life that I think defined who I am today was when I was 12. I would have been in 5th grade. I joined 4-H. So there was a local 4-H chapter. They were called the Friendly Moo-Moos. That tends to get some laughs every time I tell someone what the name of my 4-H club was. But I showed dairy cows, so like milk cows. And the reason that I wanted to join 4-H was because my cousin did it. And I went and my dad and I would help out on my uncle's farm. And my cousin started to show cows before I did. And I wanted to hang out with him. You know, I wanted to really hang out with him all the time. And he went to the local fair to show cows. And I also wanted to do that because I thought he was cool. And so when I was 12, I joined 4-H, and my first cow I got to name, and I named her Abby, and Abby was my favorite. We would go often. So whenever you are in 4-H, one of the things that you do is you walk the cow, you know, get it halter broken so that whenever you go to these shows, it's, you know, well trained so that it doesn't, you know, throw a fit or anything whenever you're in the ring. And so my dad and I would go out pretty frequently to, you know, walk Abby, and it got to the point where Abby was just my pet. So I would put a halter on Abby to walk her, and I would walk away, and she would just follow me. She was just my absolute favorite. But one thing that I think 4-H really did for me was it broke me out of my shell. And I could specifically remember, I think it was my second year of 4-H, I was what they called like the social chairman or something like that. And basically, whenever we had meetings, it was my responsibility to bring some type of game or something that we could do that was exciting and fun. And I remember that I brought this game to the meeting, and I was just petrified to explain the rules. I just couldn't do it. I had to have my dad help me because I was afraid to talk to anyone, afraid to get up and do any type of public speaking. And this was me at 12. Like, kids should be active and want to talk to everybody, but not me. I was just adamant on not wanting to talk to anybody. And the more that I was in 4-H and I was hanging out with kids my age and getting to know them and getting to know the other people within my club, it really, really broke me out of my shell. And I did 4-H for, I think, like 8 years. I did it all for maybe like 6 years, 6 or 7 years. I did it all throughout middle school and high school. And I loved it. I just loved being able to interact with other people and the competitive aspect of it, which that's one thing that has definitely carried through with me up to now. But that was just something that I really enjoyed doing. And that was, I would say that was probably the first defining moment for me in my life that I think helped shape me today. So I said that I was in 4-H throughout all of middle school and high school. So middle school for me, middle school had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at Bedford Middle School. And, you know, thinking back in hindsight, how awkward of a time was that period? So I would have been 13, 14, and 15 in middle school. And when I think back on those years, that was just so awkward. And I think that everyone would pretty much agree with that. You know, I can specifically remember we had these things called socials. And you would be able to, they would like put all the tables away in the cafeteria and they had like music playing. You could go dance and stuff. I did not dance when I was in middle school, but I can remember you had the slow dances come on, and that was a huge deal whenever you were in middle school because that gave you the opportunity to dance with somebody else. And back in middle school dances, when you danced with someone else, you basically stood so that a yardstick could be in between you. I mean, like, you were barely touching that other person. I'm sure all of you were well aware of what I'm talking about. But I can remember the first time that happened, and I was so pumped. I was like, yes, finally getting to dance with somebody. But such an awkward time. I mean, really, when you think back on that, you know, how dumb were we? Awkward and just strange kids back in middle school. But, you know, that's just something that, you know, ends up shaping us at some point. That's how we get to this, point in our lives. But after middle school, you know, obviously you go to high school. And high school is a big deal. I mean, when I was in middle school, everyone would say, you won't get away with this in high school. You won't be able to do this in high school. And I was petrified. I was like, holy cow. Like, I don't want to do anything that's going to get me in trouble in high school. Am I going to fail out of school or something? Like, I don't want anything like that. But when I got to high school, the next real event in my life, I think, happened that shaped me. And I joined marching band and I joined concert band. And the reason that I think that this shaped me was it introduced me to a new group of people, people that I was not typically accustomed to hanging out with all the time. And it was awesome. I loved hanging out with those people. It was people that had similar interests to me, you know, music. We all loved music. That was why we were there. And that was just something I really enjoyed doing. And the moment that I think being in band changed me was when I was a sophomore in college, in high school. The opportunity was there to audition to be a drum major. And if you're not familiar with what a drum major is, it's the person that gets up onto the platform and basically conducts the band. For the marching band, they conduct the band while they're on the field. And the opportunity came up to do this. And for sophomores, juniors and seniors were typically, it would have been for me, the opportunity to audition when I was a sophomore to be a drum major when I was a junior. So juniors were at the time not typically picked to be drum majors. And so it was usually the seniors that got picked because, you know, they were more knowledgeable at that stuff than I was. So I wanted to audition, but I was a little bit hesitant because I didn't think I was going to get picked. So I was like, why would I even do it if I'm not going to get picked? And there was these two other people that were going to audition, and they were so excited because they were going to get to be drum majors together. And one of them came up to me one time because they found out that I was going to audition. This is how nasty high school kids could be. And they said, you shouldn't even bother to audition because she and I are going to get the positions. And I remember to this day what she said to me. She said, it's set in stone. And I remember that. That's how much it impacted me. I remember it to this day. It's set in stone. And I was like, I'm not going to have that at all. So I auditioned. And I think it took about a week for us to find out who got it. And I got it, and one of the other girls didn't. And I felt so accomplished that I was able to take that challenge and give everything I had, and it finally paid off. That was just an overwhelming feeling of satisfaction and success that someone told me I couldn't do something, and I was finally able to do it. And to this day, I mean, I'm remembering it now. That's how much of an impact it had on me. So you could definitely tell how important it was to me. But as I went through high school, I continued to be in band, and being a drum major was awesome. I loved being up on the podium and conducting the band and all that. It was so much fun. You know, being in band is something that when I think back, you know, I think very fondly of it, and I'm very, very happy that I did it. But, you know, moving on, when I was also a sophomore, something happened that didn't directly affect me. I guess it kind of did. But I became an uncle for the first time. My nephew was born when I was a sophomore. My sister had a kid. And at the time, I don't think I realized how much thinking back, I don't think that I realized how much it impacted me at the time as I do now. I mean, just to get into it a little bit, I now have a niece and a nephew, and they are both awesome. They never cease to amaze me with how intelligent and how creative and how bright, and just everything about them is it's perfect. Like, they are so cool. They're cooler than I will ever be. My nephew is ridiculously intelligent. He outsmarts me all the time with things that I say. You know, he knows that I like to deal with technology and, you know, just like fiddle around with gadgets and stuff. And sometimes he would call me and ask me, you know, how do you do this? Or how can I fix this or something like that? Or if I went over to visit them, they would say, I'm having this problem or something, and can you help me fix it? You know, I would help them fix it. And a couple months ago, my nephew, he tried to FaceTime me from my brother-in-law's phone, and I was at work, so I couldn't pick it up. But I texted my brother-in-law afterwards, and I said, you know, what does he need any help with anything? And my brother-in-law said, oh, no, he figured it out himself. And I was like, holy cow. You know, soon I'm going to be calling him for advice on how to fix things because he's getting to be so much more intelligent than I am. And my niece is, like, going to be a world-famous gymnast someday. Like, she is ridiculously athletic and acrobatic and all that stuff, and she loves it. And she loves to show off, you know, how acrobatic she is and just so talented. My niece and nephew are just crazy good at everything that they try to do. But, you know, off of that tangent for a little bit, I became an uncle for the first time, and to this day, it was a life-changing event because, you know, I love them to death, and I'm so happy that they're around and that I get to spend time with them, and they teach me how to be a better person, and I am continuing to learn things from them all the time. And you know, to keep moving on here, when I was a junior in high school, you know, one thing, I got my first job. I guess I was a senior in high school, I guess. I got my first job, and it was at a movie theater, and it was the only movie theater in town. It was called the Pit Theater, and when I started there, I was so nervous because I was afraid I was going to mess up. I was afraid that I was going to do something wrong and mess up, and I was going to get fired. Like, this thought was running through my head 1,000 times when I was there. But having a job taught me responsibility, and it taught me how to, I guess, kind of deal with money. I was still a high school kid. But it taught me, look, I could do things and I can make money by doing them. That's cool. But the reason that I think that having a job impacted me was because I met my supervisor at the Pit Theater. Her name was Cass. And she was the coolest supervisor I could have for that job. She taught me things at that job that, she was, I think Cass was probably in her late 60s whenever I started there. But she taught me, about the job, obviously. But Cass taught me more about being a decent human being than I think that she probably will ever realize. As soon as I got the job there, she took me in like I was one of her own kids and taught me, compassion and how to care for people and how to be nice to people, and taught me responsibility and things that I never thought I would have gotten out of this job. She helped me with all of that. I would come in and I would have had a bad day, and Cass would be there and I would just vent, and she would sit there and listen, and she would always tell me, in 5 years, this isn't even gonna matter. Like, you're complaining now, I understand why you're upset, but in hindsight, when you look back at this, it's not even gonna matter. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a drink. But it was just ridiculous how much of an impact she had on me. It meant so much that she cared. And it really, I think back so fondly on my time there because of the impact that she had on me. And unfortunately, when I went away to college, I didn't have really time to be there working all the time. So, I had to I would come home on weekends sometime and have that job. And she would be there, we would talk and stuff and get caught up in everything. But when I look back on high school as a whole, I don't think anyone really likes high school, do they? It was, in addition to middle school, it was such an awkward time. You still had those awkward growing pains of not knowing who you are, not knowing what you want to do. And it was the same for me. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And until I was a senior, and I decided that I wanted to go be a civil engineer. And to this day, I can still not remember whenever I distinctly decided to be a civil engineer. I know that I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't know what kind. I didn't really know what engineers did. I knew that they were supposed to make a lot of money, but that was really about it. So I applied to Pitt Johnstown because it was close to where I lived. And I applied to go there for civil engineering. And I applied in the fall of my senior year, and I got accepted. And the next year, I ended up going there. So I graduated high school in 2010, and I started at Pitt Johnstown in fall 2010. So my first year in college, so people used to tell me how difficult college was. Like in high school, it was like, oh, college is so difficult. You have to study, and you have to be studious, and you have to, pay attention in class, and, show up to class every day, and yada, 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 that type of stuff. So I got to college, and for those of you who are engineers, or for even anybody who went to college, the first year, in hindsight, is relatively easy. I took a lot of gen ed stuff, preparing me for actual engineering classes. And so when I completed my first year, I was like, that wasn't so bad. College shouldn't be so bad. I had to study, of course, but I didn't really think it was that difficult. So I got to my second year of college. Well, I guess my first year of college, I met a bunch of cool people that I'm still friends with today, and you're going to see that theme throughout the rest of my time talking about college, because I met some of the greatest people I'll ever meet in my life in college, and I make a point to stay in touch with them constantly. So you'll definitely see that theme as I keep going and talking about college. My second year of college, when I went there, I got my butt kicked because I started to take core engineering classes, and it required me to really study and really figure out what was going on with these classes. And I remember just stressing out to the point of no belief. I was just some days I would, lose my mind because I was like, I'm never going to understand this. I'm going to fail out of school. I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm going to have to do something else that I don't want to do. And, eventually I got through it. It was tough. It was tough. But, every college kid makes it through. And I could definitely understand. I understood at that point how difficult college was because it was such an adjustment. But one opportunity that I had, and I forgot to mention this when I was talking about being a freshman in college, was I joined the concrete canoe team. And this is probably the biggest event that has changed my life. Not just because of what the concrete canoe was trying to accomplish, but the bonds that I made with people that were also in concrete canoe. And in addition to that, just all the opportunities that it really gave me. And that really came to a head whenever I was a junior in college, because I was elected to be what we call the captain of concrete canoe. So basically, I was in charge of concrete canoe. And there was a long history of success with concrete canoe. I think before I got there, we had gone to nationals, which is the biggest stage for the concrete canoe. We had gone there 5 of the past 6 years. So there was an expectation that whenever you took over, you were supposed to do the same thing. And that stressed me out a lot. There was a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of staying in the what we call the canoe lab for hours on end trying to get stuff done. But I could do a whole podcast about concrete canoe. But for the sake of time, going through junior year of college, for me, we got to the point where we made it to nationals, and I was like, yes, so excited that we did it. We finally made it to nationals. And then the next little thing happened where whenever at UPJ's concrete canoe team, the highest they had placed was 10th at nationals, and I was like, I want to beat that. I want to do whatever we can to beat 10th place. And long story short, we went to nationals and we placed 9th. And whenever I think back on that moment, that easily was one of the happiest moments of my entire life, knowing that, again, I had set out to do something with a fantastic team of people, a group of people that are some of my closest friends, and we did something that was extremely difficult, took a lot of effort, and it finally paid off. And just the feeling of accomplishment that I had from that moment was amazing. And I'm also really competitive, so getting to beat what was previously a school record was awesome. And I really can't say enough about how concrete canoe impacted me and how it shaped me into who I am today. And as I went through college, I continued my involvement with concrete canoe until I was a senior, when I kind of backed off a little bit and let the next captain take over, and I decided to be a resident assistant at UPJ. And if you don't know what a resident assistant is, it's someone who basically stays in the dorms and they monitor the dorms. So they do what we call duty rounds to make sure that nothing shady or nothing bad was going on. But the reason that I think that this had such an impact on me was, again, the people that I got to meet and the experiences that I got to have. And I guess you can kind of see that as a central theme of everything that I'm telling here. It taught me, so before I became a resident assistant, there was this whole application process that I had to go to, and it was extremely difficult. But one benefit that I had was getting to meet a brand new set of people, because I was used to dealing with engineers all the time, and engineers generally think the same way. So having the opportunity to meet someone or meet new people was refreshing. People who didn't necessarily think the same way that I did, and I could offer them opinions and they could offer me opinions, and we would be able to offer each other, different ideas. And it was really cool, just getting to meet new people in college, because whenever you're an engineer, you spend a lot of your time hanging out with engineers because you have all the same classes together and everything. So it's difficult to really expand outside of that. So that is definitely one thing that I think also really shaped me. Just getting to meet these people, some of the experiences that I got to share with them. And then, when I became a senior, I was starting to realize that, there is life after college. I got to find a job. I got to get out there to be a real engineer because I'm going to have this engineering degree and I got to go do something with it. So I started to apply to jobs. I think when it was like February of my senior year. And I think out of my friend group, I was like one of the first people to get an interview, which is ironic now because, I'll get to that in a second. So I went on this interview and I was like, well, this is kind of daunting, because I'm going to be expected to go from college out to the real world where things are not going to be as easy. It's going to be a lot of me, people relying on me to do things for them. And, for me to do actual engineering things. And so I kept applying to places and I was getting some interviews. And my friends were also getting interviews at places. And it was getting towards the end of the semester. And a lot of my friends had already had jobs lined up for them once they got out of school. And I didn't. And I was getting so frustrated because I went on all these interviews. Nobody was getting back to me. And it was just so frustrating. And it ended up being that way. I graduated and I didn't have a job. So I went to my parents' house. I lived with them after I graduated school, and I stayed with them, continued my job at the movie theater for a little longer. And I kept applying to places. I would wake up every day, look to see what available jobs there were, and applied to any that I could find. I just wanted a job at this point. And days went by, and those days turned into weeks, and then the weeks turned into months. And I was starting to lose hope that I was never going to find a job. And then so about 2 months went by, and I got an email, and it was for a company that I was familiar with. It was someone I knew worked there, someone who went to UPJ, and I got an interview. And I was so excited to go to this interview, and I went and I interviewed, and I lived in Bedford. The interview was in Pittsburgh. So I traveled the 2 hours to go to the interview and then the 2 hours to come back. It was a 4-hour interview. And by the time the interview was over, I was absolutely exhausted. But once I got out of that interview, I was like, this is where I want to be. I want this job. I will do anything I can to get this job. And I expressed that in the interview. I mean, I don't know how interview tactics are supposed to be. Maybe don't seem too needy or whatever, but I did it. I was like, I want to work here. Like, this is where I want to be. And so I was driving home thinking about the interview the entire time, of course. And I got back to my house, and I distinctly remember I was not at my house for more than 10 minutes, and I got a call, and they said I got the job. And I was absolutely ecstatic that I had gotten this job. It was exactly what I wanted, and it was exactly the right time. And all of this waiting that I had to do with, without getting a job, it was finally worth it because I got the job that I finally wanted. And I've been at that job for 4 years, and I still love it as much as I did when I took that interview and I had the interview. But, when I look back, when you're waiting like that long, it's difficult to realize how much time actually goes by. And in reality, it was only 2 months that went by before I got a job. But it seemed like it was 2.5 years in reality. But I mean, anyone can attest to this, that it just seems like it just drags on, and you're feeling like a failure, and that nobody wants you, and all of that. And for it to finally pay off again was just so worth it, and I was so happy that I lucked into the exact right position. But the job was in Pittsburgh, so I had a very short amount of time to find an apartment to come out here, but I did find one, and I came out, and someone I knew had already lived in the same apartment complex, so they told me it was a good apartment complex, so I came out, and I moved in to an apartment that was close to where theirs was. And I love telling this story because I moved out here, And the moving truck that was supposed to bring my stuff was supposed to come out on Monday, but I went out on Saturday so that I would kind of get adjusted to the area a little bit because it was completely unfamiliar to me. But I came out here and I didn't have any food. I didn't have a bed. I didn't have any furniture or anything. And I remember going to Walmart and they had a McDonald's in the Walmart, and I got McDonald's for dinner one night. It was my first night there. I got McDonald's for dinner, and I came back to my apartment and I hit the light switch and I sat down on my floor to eat because I didn't have a table or anything. And I was there for about 5 minutes and the power went out. And it was storming really bad. And I didn't have any furniture. I didn't have anyone to hang out with. And it was just me alone on the floor eating my McDonald's in the dark while the rain was pounding on the windows. And that was kind of like welcome to real life type of moment. And in hindsight, it doesn't seem that bad. But at the time, I was like, what am I doing? How did I get to this position? Because I'd never been that far away from home. I'd never lived by myself, like strictly by myself. I was away from my parents. And I was like, am I doing the right thing? Is this what I should be doing? Second guessing everything. But, obviously, it turned out to be the right thing. So yeah, I've been at my company now for 4 years, doing civil engineering things. It's a lot of fun. In the past year and a half, I started to go back to school. So I am going to Robert Morris part-time, doing everything online to get my MBA. And I'm doing this podcast now, and this is a lot of fun. But, one thing you have to think about is, after everything that's happened in life, what are the key takeaways that you can really have? Like, what got you to this point? And the first thing that I think is really important for me, and it's carried me a long way for me, is my faith, and my belief in God, and being able to rely on that relationship, and knowing that I have an outlet to turn to whenever I'm not feeling myself, or if I'm feeling stressed or I'm worried. It's nice to know that I have that outlet that I could go to, and it's carried me throughout my entire life. And I really can't say enough about how that has strengthened me throughout my lifetime. I didn't really talk about a lot of different hardships that I've encountered through my life, but really my faith is really kind of what got me through those. And then in addition to my family, I would not be where I am today without my family. They mean everything to me. I mean, I went on this little rant talking about how awesome my niece and nephew were. And my mom and dad are awesome too. They've always been really supportive of me, and my extended family has also always been really supportive of me as well. And then, last but not least, my support system of my friends. I've met so many awesome people throughout the years who really have helped me along the way. Throughout high school and throughout college, I talked about how in Concrete Canoe I met so many cool people who I try to keep in touch with today just because of how awesome they are and how much we have in common and all of that. But I really can't say enough about how that helped me get to where I am today. And then lastly, what I hope is gonna, be a legacy for me at some point is doing this, getting out of my comfort zone, doing this podcast. And, I have no idea what's going to come out of this. I'm having fun doing it. I have no idea where it's going to head. I love having my friends come on and talk. And they seem to enjoy doing it as well. So I'm going to continue doing this until I physically can't, or I run out of ideas, or nobody wants to come talk to me anymore. I mean, that's really what it's going to come down to. But yeah, so that was tough. Not going to lie, pull back the curtain a little bit. I wrote a bunch of stuff down, just ideas that I had for what I wanted to talk about here. And I think I hit on all of them. And, getting personal like this is tough. But I definitely enjoyed getting this opportunity. to talk. And I'm hoping to do more of these solo talks. They're not going to always be about me. Some of them will be about stuff that I find or stuff that I think is worth talking about and getting out there. But yeah, this has been fun. I definitely got a lot out of this. The nerves have now gone away. So be on the lookout for episode 3. This isn't official episode 3. This is kind of like an in-between episode. But be on the lookout for episode 3. It's going to be coming out hopefully sometime next week. It's going to be a fun one. They're all fun ones, obviously, but this is going to be a fun one as well. So be on the lookout for that. And until episode 3, I will see you guys later.